You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions
WeeklyTrek,
episode 23.
WeeklyTrek episode 23. Welcome to WeeklyTrek, your roundup of everything Star Trek that happened this week. Transportation of major updates, replication of new merch, Section 31 caliber fan speculation, whether you were off on a secret Starfleet mission or crash landed onto Kronos and missed out on Trek news this week. WeeklyTrek is here to catch you up. I am Shashank Avvaru, co-host of PoliTreks. And joining me today is one of my favorite people in the entire world, Barry DeFord, co-host of PoliTreks. Hey, Barry, how are you?
I'm pretty great. I'm just hoping if anyone crashed into Kronos that they didn't land on or disturb any of those secret bombs hiding deep within its cave system.
Ixnay on the secrets. Why do you have to reveal everything, Barry?
Oh,
now,
right.
Now they're not secret anymore.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. That's my bad.
You can redeem yourself by telling us what we are going to be discussing this week, Barry.
Oh, it's a good little list here. We've got CBS killing a fan project, so that's always entertaining, and that comes from fallout from previous debacles we'll talk about. We've got Sir Patrick Stewart sharing his first photo, writing in the writer's room with some very notable folk hanging out there. We've got an entertaining joke that James McAvoy is interested in getting his fingers into the Star Trek world. Considering his connections to Sir Patrick Stewart, he might be a good fit for maybe a couple flashbacks. We've got Mego coming back, and that's something to talk about. Star Trek Mego not Mego blocks. Star Trek Mego from the 70s. If you were a 70s child, you likely played with these, and if you're an 80s child, your older siblings would be mad at you for stealing them. And we also have a brand new novel coming out by Dayton Ward, which is going to be off the hook. We've got a Short Treks trailer announcement to talk about, and we've got Shashank doing a mini review of Star Trek versus Transformers issue number 1, which is something that is now accessing all of my waking and sleeping thoughts.
Well, I will do my best to not disappoint you. Opening with that first item, that was a little surprising to me. Have you looked into at all this Stage 9 fan project that they've been doing where it's an Enterprise VR? You could actually go into the Enterprise D and explore everything on the ship. Have you looked into that at all? Were you aware that this was happening?
I was mildly aware. My YouTube is often full of either like niche political documentaries and then stuff about Star Trek. So, you know, I see some junk ball media. I see Steve Shives. I see E.C. Henry out there. I see Trexpertise, some really great YouTube folk. And then, of course, I listen to podcasts on YouTube. So a lot of our friends and fellow network members. But there are times when I have seen stuff about this. I think I watched the original trailer thing, but I was probably vacuuming or doing the dishes or something while it was just kind of auto-playing. I guess for me, it's not surprising that this didn't get put all the way through. I mean, we've got Star Trek Bridge Crew doing its TNG expansion, so I can see how the companies that hold the license are going to be protective of it.
I can understand that, and we're reporting this from PC Mag, where the article goes into a little bit about what exactly happened, and it pretty much is a group of fans who used the Epic Games Unreal game engine, and they created the Enterprise from TNG. And one of the things that's very interesting to me is that, this is basic protection of your IP, right? Like all companies do this. Star Wars does this. Any big franchise that makes sure that is trying to make more money from people is going to do everything they can to protect their IP. So I can understand that. What I'm a little concerned by is that if we are to play an objective VR game, at this point, as someone who has been to the Star Wars VR with our delightful Trek Profiles host John Krakorian in Las Vegas, it is incredible. It is of a standard that puts to shame every other VR anything. So given that that's happening, and given that this was, if you look at the videos that were shared, they're objectively good. So even though they canceled it, I hope CBS and Paramount try and find some way to actually get something out of these guys that they can make official. Is that me being too selfish, Barry?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it is that kind of frustration that we have sort of seen now that Star Trek did end up having to actually fight a battle where someone was using their property, basically, so Paramount and CBS's property, to make money on their own for themselves, and actually also kind of grifting fans as well. Star Trek has always had a very light relationship until a few years ago with the people who would be doing fan films. I mean, we think of New Voyages, or the first few episodes of Star Trek continues until the whole debacle took place with the whole Axanar nonsense. So I think this is unfortunate fallout from that same kind of vein, right? Is they have to maintain a certain level of, I guess, a certain level of authority. So as much as I want to see something like this, fully come through, and yeah, you told me about the Star Wars VR experience. It's past due. We need something more than just bridge crew.
One thing I'll say about this is that maybe there is actually some good to come out of people trying to recreate things from Star Trek and allowing people to get some kind of pleasure out of it. Like if you think about it, the flip phone is a Star Trek fan project. I'm sure Motorola back then thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we made something that looked like the little thing that they use in Star Trek, and it made that sound while they did it. There's so many things out there that represent Star Trek, officially and unofficially. And if there are people trying to express their creativity through it, the least they can do is at least let them live for a little while before they shut it down. So I kind of mixed feelings about this, but I can understand from an economic standpoint why they do it. So just that's about all that I'll say.
Fair enough. So we're moving next here. Speaking of the next generation, of course, over the last little while, everyone's been going pretty crazy over Sir Patrick Stewart's picture of him and the entire writing room group, and some notable people as well coming in on this, which I have to say, I am very happy to see them all. I know there's been a little bit of, I guess, for lack of a better term, some frustration over some of the writers. So we've got here, obviously, Kirsten Beyer, we've got Michael Chabon, we've got Akiva Goldsman, Deandra Pendleton Thompson, James Duff, and of course there's Patrick Stewart right at the front. So I think this is a good crew personally. I think that all of them together, they're going to be able to play off each other, work towards each other's strengths. To be perfectly honest, I am most happy to know that Kirsten Beyer is there. She is easily my favorite of the crew, and she wrote some of my favorite Voyager episodes, so that's pretty great, and has been a part of some pretty great comics. So overall, this looks like a pretty convincing group of people at the helm.
It's your standard production crew photo, except everybody's freaking out because Patrick Stewart's sitting there, and this is the first real quote unquote image that we've gotten of the show. It's nothing about the actual show, but it's nice to know that things are moving along fine. And what do you think these guys are discussing in this picture? Do you have any theories about what they're looking at?
I would assume that they're on Amazon, or maybe they're checking out like the IKEA site for a bigger table, because I don't think you could add any more snacks and paper and San Pellegrino bottles. So yeah, I think the first thing they need to do is get themselves a bigger table.
I think they're all looking at every engage that Patrick Stewart ever did on Star Trek, and they're going through it, and they're going, that was a good engage. That wasn't the best. And Patrick Stewart's just sitting and watching, going, I agree, I disagree.
or at the very end, he just slowly rotates his office chair back around and then just says engage, and then everyone at the table freaks out.
It's very heartwarming. in a week that's been heavy for most of us. It's a nice change of pace. It's a good update to get, and I don't know what the show is going to be. It's good that they're keeping it tight-lipped. I do remember that at the IDW panel in Star Trek Las Vegas this year, they shared a tease about a possible young Picard comic book. So we're doing it looks like we're doing an old Picard TV show, a young Picard comic book. So in a big bad way, looks like Picard's back.
The best part about that as well is that ties into the next story with James McAvoy. I was just going to mention, Picard being older and everything like that and kind of getting back into his original role. He will encounter people who have never heard of him, both actor and character. And it just reminds me of an episode of Extras with Ricky Gervais when he's talking with Sir Patrick Stewart and he's making all these like statements where he's like, and I'll make it so and all this. And Ricky Gervais is just not saying anything. And he's like, well, you're an unmarried man in his mid 40s. And he's like, yes. And he's like, and you've never heard of Star Trek The Next Generation? And Ricky Gervais is like, no. And he's like, good Lord. And so I just sort of think of us within our, those of us who had Sir Patrick Stewart in our televisions, either on DVD, Blu-ray, or just, in the syndication of the show itself. I think we've got a lot riding on this and a lot invested, but mainly I think the other thing that they need to make sure they do is make this as relevant as possible for people who are going to have this show as their first Star Trek as well, right? So I think that they'll be keeping that in mind. But on to James McAvoy. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, we're reporting this from trekmovie.com, and when this picture was shared on Patrick Stewart's Instagram, the picture that we just talked about, there are two comments from James McAvoy. The first one saying, need a flashback guy with a series of question marks. And then just saying, Sir Pat Stew, I've got previous experience and will work for autographs. For those of you not in the know, which I understand, but kind of breaks my heart, is that James McAvoy plays a young Professor X in the X-Men franchise.
And for those of you who are really out of the know, Sir Patrick Stewart also plays Professor X. So if you went back to Barry at, I'd say 13 years old, he didn't know that Professor X is eventually going to be played by Captain Picard, but he would be very excited to know that. So I like this kind of, Bill Murray playing Garfield in the movie, and then the guy who plays Garfield in the cartoon plays Peter Venkman in the animated Ghostbusters series. So I just like this kind of rotational sort of thing.
So another really popular guy to have played a young Patrick Stewart is, of course, Tom Hardy from Nemesis. And I'm not saying this is wish fulfillment in any way, but I did float this idea around kind of as a joke in one of our previous weekly treks that I did with you, where I said, I really would like to see James McAvoy come back as a young Picard. I don't think they'll do it, because if there is a young Picard in the show, they'll probably de-age him. With all the new technology that's available, there is a more of a possibility that we'll see a younger de-aged Picard than we'll ever see another actor playing Picard, because now we actually have the technology to do it. But it would be pretty sweet if they did it. And I just want to get your opinion on what do you think of James McAvoy's sense of humor? I think it's pretty funny. I'm glad he did it. And if of course we probably, like I said, won't see a young Picard played by another actor, who would you really like to see come back in the old Picard show?
Boy, well, first of all, if James McAvoy is coming back, he isn't sort of implying his fandom. I hope that when they come at him with those with the clippers, he tells them, no. Jean-Luc had hair when he was younger, and I think that's probably my biggest beef with Nemesis, actually, is when they show Tom Hardy and he's got his head shaved, and I'm like, nope. He was stabbed by a Nausicaan and he totally had hair. Everyone's going crazy about Discovery's canon violations and stuff. That is my big canon violation. That's where I hold the line. But I think really any other of the characters coming back. I mean, Gates McFadden would be great to have. Beverly Crusher, I think she's got to play some kind of role. Worf would probably come back. My only big question is, will Brent Spiner come back as Data? Now, age does a thing to the body that wouldn't be done to Data or B4, I suppose, in this respect. And I am concerned about that. That for that reason, maybe there could be some digital enhancements and stuff like that. Nothing against Mr. Spiner. I think he's fit as a fiddle. I met him at STLV this year, and he seems great. But obviously, I'm not even as the same as I was when I was younger. So this is something to keep in it's sort of in our minds is Data is supposed to be kind of a timeless character. So that would be the only real hang up. But otherwise, I mean, any of them coming back would be fantastic.
Well, they can also explain the Data part away. Data is, at the end of the day, a set of chips, and he's a piece of software coded together with hardware. Like if you look at the fundamental technical aspects of things, so they can always make another Data, just call him something else like Info, or they can come up with all kinds of cool names, anything to play on the word information.
That or like a previous episode moment, like where like Data's like leaning too close to like a microwave transmitter in engineering, and he just kind of melts a bit.
It's what I really, really like. Would like for them to do is bring back Q so that we can finally address all that sexual tension and just get a resolution on that.
Just that monumental big screen kiss. It's so deep, it's meaningless, right?
Yeah, just do it, you guys. You've been shirtless, you've laid down next to each other. It's like the progressive next step. But lot of other celebrities also weighed in, just everybody wanting to say, I would love to reprise my role again. But speaking of things that are coming back, were you a fan of the Mego Toys? Barry, did you have any growing up? Because we have some exciting Mego news to talk about.
I have older cousins who had the Mego Toys, and by the time I came across them, they were pretty indistinguishable. I just sort of mentioned a moment of Data maybe being too close to some kind of melting radiation-y, microwavey thing. I think most of the Mego Toys I came across, because I was born in the 80s, usually at one point had firecrackers taped to their backs, or they'd gone through some reconstructive surgery of some sort. So it'll be interesting to see these back on the shelves, I assume. But I guess again, this is just sort of that kitschy nostalgia that I am 100% a slave to myself. It's just this one doesn't catch me because I missed it by about 5 years. And like you were born in like 2008 or something, right?
I wish I was that young. That would be nice. I could. I would be. There would be a lot of things that I'd like to vanish away from the 90s. But here's a confession. People who know me know that I collect action figures, and I have always had a secret love for the Mego Toys. There is something so charming and old school about them. I've been on the hunt secretly to find them and get them for myself. It's definitely something that's been on my radar, and I bet you all your cousins who had tied up fireworks to those figures, given their value now, I'm sure they regret it. Like some of the best Mego Toys in good condition actually go for thousands of dollars today. So, but not to panic. If like me, you're a fan of Mego Toys and you've always wanted to own one, good news, the Mego Toys actually came back and they're selling in Target. They have been for a few months, and there are some really cool TOS toys. We have Sulu. I believe they're working on the Mirror series coming back from the TOS franchise. But we have an exciting interview from Trek Movie in which the president of Mego Toys, Marty Abrams, talks about just what it means to make these Mego Toys today, what it means to make that comeback. Before, if I understand the franchise timeline correctly, before there is anything, the first real good, critically acclaimed toys that came out from Star Trek come from the Mego line. That's really what people try to hang on to and remember.
Well, of course, I how could I forget like beefy mirror Spock Mego Toy, right? Like he was way better shape than Prime Spock. The toy was. Boy,
it's certainly very, very cool that there is an interview out and they're talking about this stuff. I just don't know if these will sell very well. Like I don't think they'll, of course, sell the way they sold back in the day. I don't think they'll ship out millions of toys because kids have, of course, moved on from toys to cooler things. Their version of a toy is completely different from mine and yours. But I am pretty excited from the feel that I get of Marty Abrams within this interview. He's talking about the hopefulness of these toys. He's talking about how how much there is more potential to explore, but ultimately leads us to the Target website link, and you can actually go and see all the figures that are currently available. But it just gets me excited for these toys. Is there any specific Mego toy that you're curious about now that you know this stuff from the interview, Barry?
I guess like for me, just the the uniforms are entertaining, right? The little black part kind of looks like a scarf, and I do like the Mugatu Gorn, and so I think like many here, I wonder if these toys really are for the kids or if they're for the 40-something-year-old folk who enjoy Star Trek who might be going to Target to pick these up. Of course, in Canada, we can't pick them up in Target because Target died here and we don't have Target anymore. So we'll have to go on Amazon or Carrier Pigeon or something. Yeah, I think it's all right. What about you? Do you have any Mego toys that stand out to you?
I've always wanted the Mego Spock because that's really one of the first, how do I put it? One of the first really good Star Trek toys. Like if you're a history buff when it comes to toys, you'll know that toy was one of the most popular things because they were very good about capturing the likeness of Leonard Nimoy. So I've always wanted to own one of those toys, and this actually gives me the opportunity to get them because there is a really cool Star Trek Mirrored Universe set that they're making, and I'm sure it'll actually lead up to us getting a Prime Universe Spock at some point. So that's definitely on my radar. For someone who's secretly dreamed about getting these and couldn't afford them, I'm very excited about hopefully rectifying that and in my lifetime owning a cool Mego Spock.
Didn't they use Mego toys for Robot Chicken as well?
Yeah, they used it in Robot Chicken. It's also very famously used on The Big Bang Theory. Right. There is an episode in which Sheldon plays with a Mego toy in a transporter set and he breaks it. That's another thing that's brought up in the interview. The interviewer asks whether they are going to bring back some of those famous Mego play sets. And at this point, there are no plans, but if these sell well enough, I'm sure there'll be a big wider outreach, and who knows, we might get a Discovery Burnham, a Discovery Klingon one day in Mego, which would just make my heart stop because that would be the greatest thing ever.
Or even better, a Big Bang Theory Mego Spock that has a little Bluetooth connector and it'll talk to you.
One can only dream, Barry. One can only dream.
So speaking of speaking to me personally, Dayton Ward has a brand new novel coming out, and that is infinitely exciting. Have you heard about this? Did you hear? Like I think he was on. He was on Trek Geeks on their Deep Space Nine See It or Skip It. I think it was season 4. And he was making like little allusions where he's like, oh, well, there's something happening soon. And oh, well, hey, ha, ha, ha. And now I know what it is. And I'm like, oh, man, I bet you he told Dan and Bill off camera or like when they weren't recording.
No, I haven't heard anything about this. But of course, this is going to be they're going to probably take an obscure character for this new whatever Dayton Ward's doing. And they're going to go completely original and bring us something new and absolutely. Nothing from anyone we've seen before.
No
right?
prequels. You know, nothing, anything, you know, I mean, even the ship wouldn't have been encountered before or brought up at all. It would be a brand new design. Just kidding. It's a continuation for Captain Picard. It's post Nemesis, and it's got Section 31. It's got Jellicoe with a big scandal, and I am really hoping that though he's not in the picture, Dayton Ward might have had a chat with some of his friends in the writer's room.
From reading the synopsis, I'll just read off a couple of things. We are, of course, reporting this from comicbook.com, and it looks like it's a multi-layered story. And Section 31, the covert organization which is operated without accountability in the shadows, has been exposed. And now Starfleet must decide the consequences for numerous officers caught up in the scandal, including William Ross, Alina Nechayev, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, and Barry's favorite Edward Jellicoe. So it looks like there is another side of the story where Picard and the crew of Enterprise must put aside their personal feelings as they investigate a massive, mysterious spacecraft. So, like I said, lots going on in this novel. Very intriguing. I'm excited. What about you, Barry? that Edward Jellicoe must have just given you a jump as soon as you read it, didn't it?
So because I defend him in one debate, now everyone thinks I love Edward Jellicoe. Well, I'll just let you know that Edward and I are a bit on the downside right now. We're not doing very well, so I'm not in love with him anymore. But I love Dayton Ward's work. I think his writing is visceral. I think he displays, or he brings action and movement really well into his writing styles. He's able to get inside of the heads of his characters very, very well. And I am just so very excited to read more of his work because he is a very good writer, and I feel very comfortable when he is at the helm of any Star Trek story because I know it's going to be good. So the last book by him that I read was Drastic Measures, and if you haven't read that book, you need to read it. It's a big-ish book, I guess, for your standard kind of novel fare, but I guarantee once you get into it, you won't be able to put it down.
For people that think that we critique Star Trek a lot and we talk about, how things aren't as good as they might be in other franchises, I will bite the bullet on this one and say that they're doing really, really good work, especially in the novels and comic books, which, of course, I bang the drum for everywhere I go.
There's no bias here. No bias.
Yeah. The amount of off-television franchising, be it with novels, comic books, action figures. Just look at the things we discussed today. Star Trek is really, really is for anyone who keeps talking about the good old days of Star Trek and how it will not be the way it used to be before. Well, it won't, because it's better than it's ever been, if you ask me, with the exposure and the outreach and people around the world being able to view Star Trek anytime they want and being able to be engaged, no pun intended, in all kinds of media, whatever they like. This is just the more. Just keep giving me more of this. Just give me so much Star Trek, I never have to leave the house.
Yeah, no, that's really, really it. And then once they invent replicators, then we really don't have to leave the house. But that is fantastic, Mr. Ward. If you're listening, which you could be, who knows? I'd love your work, and it's great to see you are still getting the bills paid by doing things you love. So that is wonderful. Speaking of wonderful things coming down the pipe very, very soon for us, Short Treks is on its way. We have our episode list of Short Treks that have come out. We know what's coming, what's happening, where it's going to be, and our first one is called Runaway, and it is going to be about our favorite cadet Tilly and her sort of move up to getting onto the Discovery, I believe. So that is pretty great. There will be more to come. And unfortunately, everybody in Canada is twiddling their thumbs right now because we don't know if we're getting it, because it says it's on CBS All Access. It has not been stated that it's going to be on Space, nor has it been stated that it's going to be on our streaming platform, Crave. It's going to be on Netflix internationally from the sounds of it, but I have not heard a thing about it actually showing up in Canada. And though people are like, oh no, don't worry, it'll work out, you guys don't know how Canadian broadcasting works unless you live here. So looking at you, Brandon, at Trek FM, and you, Dan, at Trek FM as well, and any other Canadians listening, we need to send Space and Crave a quick message and just let them know, because they will forget if we don't remind them.
This news was dropped, this little trailer, on, I believe, September 27th or 26th. But ever since it came out, I have been chomping at the bit to speculate about what is going to happen in this mini episode. So I'm sure the legalese will work out. I am positive that Paramount and CBS are not going to miss out on an opportunity to show all of this to people around the world. But from what you see of this trailer, Barry, what do you think the episode's going to be? Have you enjoyed everything that's come out of that Short Treks? Of course, we discussed a long list in our last week's Weekly Trek. If you're interested, we threw out some crazy theories. I bought in a Ferengi and a Gorn, and it was insane. John kept up with it, so I'm sure everybody drove themselves insane listening to them. But what are your theories? What do you think this is going to be? And just tell me how excited you are about this, man.
I'm super excited, but that was a long walk for unfortunately the listeners are going to get a bit of a short drink of water here. I haven't watched the trailers and I don't intend to. And the point of that is I really am stuck on this idea of coming into season 2 and any more Star Trek coming in with the freshest eyes possible. I got so deep into the hype and I got so into it that, you know, you watch enough fan theories and stuff and you're going to find one that's right. And I think that's what ended up happening for me last time. And so I am intentionally not watching any more trailers. I watched that first Discovery trailer because I knew it wasn't going to be that huge or big or anything like that. I want to walk into these episodes as clear-eyed as possible, and that is a me thing. So if anyone else is watching them, and Shashank, I definitely want to hear what you think and how excited you are and whatnot. And even, you know, little details is fine. But yeah, no, I'm really trying to just step back from this one and just kind of walk in as clear-eyed as possible.
Well, I'll respect your discretion there and your need to not see everything that's being given out. And I'll try my best to keep it spoiler-free on what I see, and I'll leave my theories out. If you're interested, people can tweet me at gutter_hero and I'll share them. But just on a bigger scale, it's insane that we already are 1 year out of Discovery and season 2 is minutes away.
Many minutes, more minutes than I'd like.
We're closer to it than we're farther from it. That's for sure.
Since we started this episode, yes, but it's too long, Shashank. I can't wait.
But it looks like it's going to come out on October 4th, and the trailer shows Tilly in a very familiar place. I'll say that. We've seen her here.
She's at Costco.
Oh well, hey, you whether you want to discuss spoilers or not, I need to respect that part of the conversation. So I won't tell you where she is, but she's definitely in a familiar place where good times have transpired in the course of season 1. But just all it does look intriguing. It looks like
she's in the Discovery's ball pit, isn't she? That's where good things happened. The ball.
Of course, as with everything Discovery, as she's having a seemingly good time, things just start going haywire. And I'm excited for this episode. I know everybody listening is excited. But I on a separate but not entirely unrelated piece of news, I did on PoliTreks. I ran a poll asking people what is the best season 1 of Star Trek, which show has the best season 1, and I gave them a bunch of options, and I believe by 60 or 65% people voted that Discovery season 1 has the best season 1 of all Star Trek shows. So for people who yell out saying Discovery is not canon, we can't have Discovery as canon, Discovery is not good enough, just look at now the numbers speak for themselves. And the fact that they're doing innovative things like giving us short tracks before the actual episodes debut and just building up that hype and giving us these character-focused episodes just goes to show how they're going above and beyond to give us more fun, entertaining Star Trek. And just more reasons for haters to hate, but for those of us that have enjoyed it and love it, it's just a good time all around. It's a great way to end the year with short treks.
It is, and I have a great way to end Weekly Trek, and that is the mini review that you have on Star Trek versus Transformers. So this is our animated series TOS crew meeting up with Optimus Prime and all of his buddies. So that for me is just super exciting. I loved Transformers as a kid, and I'm just wondering, with us, talking about these toys and all the pieces that sort of drive our nostalgic fandom in a lot of cases. I just wonder if this will become a norm where 35 to 45-year-old men will get together with their Transformers and their Megos and their Mega Blocks, and we'll just play on the carpet like we used to and just have a great time.
I don't know if we'll go that far, but I will tell you this. For people who've listened to our Reading Trek shows, Weekly Trek shows, we just love the comics here. We have an entire series dedicated to it called Drawing Trek. And no matter how you look at the comics, there are people who enjoy them, people who don't. There is just incredibly good storytelling happening on the comics front with Star Trek Discovery series, Star Trek Boldly Go series. Mike Johnson, the writer, the Tipton's writers, J.K. Woodward, Tony Shasteen, and Helen Hernandez. And with this series, Philip Murphy, they just keep raising the bar and bringing DC and Marvel to their knees with the quality storytelling that they do. And of course, everybody knows what this is leading up to. Oh, good God. Star Trek versus Transformers is amazing. It is beautiful. We'll give you a full review, Marty of WeeklyTrek, on the next WeeklyTrek episode. So wait for that one. But in this issue 1 of this incredible, insane crossover that's too ridiculous and amazing, and what is going on in this world, but I can't wait for all the other issues level craziness. Star Trek vs. Transformers starts off in a very simple way. The TAS crew is off, and they're out in deep space exploring, and they find out that there is a planet in danger, and they go down, and lo and behold, there are Decepticons shooting at things, and that's where the story takes off. The first thing I want to tell you, Barry, and I'll do my best to keep this spoiler free. We will get into the spoilers on WeeklyTrek. The first thing I'll get into is, while reading this comic, Philip Murphy, the artist, just shows us how much of a genius he is. For comparison, I put up a page of the comic in which we see Captain Kirk and a Transformer, and I put it next to screen grabs from the animated series and the Transformers Generation 1 series that came out in the 80s. And the art being depicted there is uncanny. If I showed those screen grabs to people just next to each other, you couldn't tell which one was the animated series and which one was the comic, because he draws them perfectly to the dot. So if for nothing, buy this comic, because you're holding in your hands just expertly replicated creation and merging of franchises that are worlds apart and characters that you never in your wildest dreams thought they could be brought to pages so perfectly. So buy it for the art. And the other thing I'll say in my review is that Mike Johnson is one of the writers. He writes this, he co-writes this. And at this point, everything he writes is so good. I have been reading his run since Star Trek Boldly Go, which came out a little over 10 years ago. And at this point, it's just annoying that there is no way he writes a bad comic book. I've never seen a comic of his that I read and went, this wasn't worth my money. So Mike Johnson knocks it out of the park, but the art is really the big story here. It's the winner, and Transformers #1 gets a strong warp 9 from me. Full review coming in, of course, with Marty, but that's all I have to say about this for now, man.
All I heard throughout that entire review was just Stan Bush's "You've Got the Touch," just playing behind your review the entire time, and that is for me the most excited part is the Enterprise getting to meet the Transformers. That is just too much, and it'll be quite the joy to just go into Insano Land and just watch the whole thing, because let's face it, TAS is insane as it is, and getting to see that with just the bombastic insanity of Transformers, like, oh man, I just want to see Captain Kirk punch Starscream. That is what I want more than anything. But we'll see.
But lots of good surprises await us. I highly endorse this. Go ahead and buy it. It's totally worth whatever money you're paying. And in a previous episode, we discussed a preview of this with Jamie McGregor. So Jamie, if you're listening, have you bought that comic yet? And if you haven't, we can't be friends anymore.
Jamie's not listening to us. I know it. I know it deep down.
But that's all we have for WeeklyTrek this week. Where can people find you, Barry?
You can find me on Twitter at BJORNDEFJORD. That's Bjorn DeFord, or BDEF on Twitter. And you can find me on Facebook at PoliTreks. And you can find our show at PoliTreks, because that's where we reside, on Facebook. And then on Twitter, I think we can find you somewhere too, right, Shashank?
People can find me on @gutter_hero, which interestingly is a comic book reference. I love talking Trek. I love talking comic books. I love talking anything nerdy. And people can find this show that we do every week with rotating hosts from across the tricorder pantheon on at WeeklyTrek, WeeklyTrek.
I think it's perfect too, because if you decided no longer to do any comic book stuff in your life, if you took up bowling, you wouldn't have to change your Twitter handle.
That's true. That would be a really smooth, problemless change. But until next week, this has been Shashank Avvaru
And Barry DeFord.
Live long and prosper.
And onward to Star Society.